Hi everyone, this is Leonora. Today I want to talk to you about the relativistic nature between how we perceive and how we experience, and how perception influences our experience and how our experiences shapes and influences our sense of self or our ego self. So in order to do this, I'm going to give you a little diagram. And okay, so on the left, the little blue dots are my annotation of experiences that you can feel through the felt sense in the field of awareness. Yeah. So this is a somatic experience. It might feel like energy moving from an emotion. It might feel like energy stuck from pain or rigidity. It might feel like busy mind or thought mental activity. And my little circles on the right are the annotation for a perceiver. Yeah, the one who is looking and the one who is having this experience. So sometimes this is called the ego self. Sometimes I like to refer to it as the false self, or perhaps a more friendly term is the adaptive self. This is the part of you that has adapted when an experience could not be integrated. It is actually caused from an overwhelm when I was not able to remain present in myself. And so I split off, yeah, and you know, I'm now avoiding situations, or I have a whole series of likes and dislikes or beliefs or concepts or mental material basically that creates a filter to how I perceive the world. So the third element here is the black dot at the center, and is the actual origin of everything. So, you know, this is where the trauma technology, which is not a technology really with a method that you can learn, but it's a unfolding process that you can explore through the direct experience of your field. One of the things that you can ground into is the experience of stillness. And stillness is a doorway to the absolute and original self. So this is kind of a map in some way of how trauma and spirituality come together. Because in my own journey, I found that I was following two threads. One was, you know, my wounded self and all her trauma and the limitations that came from that. And the other one was my spiritual self and my access to states of consciousness that were very profound, yeah, which came to me originally through an awakening experience. So what I discovered after, you know, doing trauma healing on myself for many, many years was that there seemed to be an infinite number of traumas, and I couldn't find the fast track to healing them. And it seemed like I needed the fast track because of the number of traumatic stuff that I was dealing with. So my quest became very engaged in, you know, what was the cause of this. And there was a series of events, and, you know, sometimes I like to think of it as magic that guided my journey to these discoveries. But what I discovered was that the origin of all trauma is the absolute. And so that if you actually maintain a sovereign connection to your field, and you penetrate into the direct experience of trauma or sensation in the body, and you go as far as you can go, that the origin point of that experience is the absolute. So the absolute here is the undivided and undifferentiated state of consciousness, sometimes referred to as the Tao, the ground of being, God, or the mystery. It has many names. So over time, you know, a model and a way started to reveal itself. And what I wanted to share today is really to get some understanding about the relativistic nature of these three components, what I call the Trinity. So what I found was limiting my ability to heal fully to the causal layer was a perceiver or an orientation to the journey of healing. And for me, and commonly for many, the orientation is I'm broken and I need to fix myself. And that position actually maintains your brokenness. That position maintains your woundedness. So at some point, it's very valuable to turn attention to, you know, what is the position? What is the identity? What is the sense of self that's entangled, using the term that is from quantum physics? What is the entanglement between perception and experience? And how do I disentangle perception and experience? And the way that you do that is really by discernment. So discernment and differentiation gives us integrity. And integrity, the root for that is integration. So the way we integrate an experience is we introduce it to God or to the original self. And the original self didn't have that experience. And so the truth prevails and the lie dissolves. And that is healing. Yeah. So what one realizes that the perceiver or the sense of self or the identity, the ego self, is unconsciously maintaining a dynamic and entangled relationship with what it sees, what it experiences, both inside the body and outside the body. So I want to give you a practical example of that. For example, if you have fear or anxiety arising in the present moment, and there is no object in the vicinity of you that is threatening, then it's quite natural to deduce that that fear is coming from something implicit from within the field. So if there was a tiger in the room, the fear would have an object to be afraid of in the present moment. And when that actually happens, your system uses its instinctual ability to, you know, give you bursts of adrenaline and cortisol and, you know, various hormones and chemicals to ensure that you either run or fight this tiger or freeze, you know. And that is not a prefrontal cortex forebrain type decision. That is just an instinctual happening, a survival type of situation. But one of the challenges of being a human being is that we have self-awareness. It gives us a gift, but to master this gift is a challenge. And I feel of it to be the reason to live. The reason that we're here is to discover who we are. And what has derailed that? So what's derailed that is our trauma. So if there is nothing threatening you and you're experiencing, you know, a bad state, like a fear, then we can deduce that that fear is a residual fear of an unresolved past experience. So instead of being in the present moment, yeah, you are not in the present moment, because in the present moment, there's nothing threatening, even though you may perceive threat. Now that threat is coming from this unresolved past that's within you. But you also may perceive a threat outside you, even though there isn't a threat outside you. So for example, there might not be a tiger, but you might be projecting that threat onto something that's really not threatening. But it's kind of like the fear is looking for an object to be afraid of. And so it projects, you know, something outside, like, you know, I might be afraid of my landlord, yeah? And there's no reason to be, but that's what's getting created. So there's this entanglement now between that fear and the I, the sense of self that I've become in order to protect myself, to ensure that it never happens again. So this survival instinct, because the nervous system hasn't integrated what happens, is now kind of derailing our life and having us project fear and keeping us and maintaining separation, you know, and limiting our life. So the inquiry and investigation and curiosity that can bring attention to, firstly, the experience of fear, can diminish the level of fear. So just meeting the experience in the present moment will diminish the fear. Using your breath, for example, will diminish the fear. But at some point, we need to turn our attention to the entanglement of this false self, the one who is afraid, and what is happening in that experience. Now, the integration of both the trauma, which I think of as the feminine, and the perceiver, which I think of as the masculine force, both of them have their roots in the original self. So it's kind of like in a traumatic event, we left the original self and we split in two. We split into the feminine in separation from the masculine, or the experience in separation from perception. So we need to understand the relativistic nature between the two, and we can integrate them back to the original self by introducing stillness to the approach. So there's a lot more to that, and I will undoubtedly talk more about it in other videos. If you have questions, that always inspires me. So if you like this material, I invite you to comment, to share, and to subscribe. And we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for listening.